Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we are winding down our deadCenter 2019 Film Festival coverage. It's been a wild weekend. There was a lot of movies, a lot of shorts, a lot of parties. I gave Lance McDaniel at least 3 high fives. I saw LeBron, gave him a hug. I mean, that's pretty much every day, but it was at deadCenter, so it was extra special.
He's very huggable.
Yeah.
Very huggable, bud. Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna talk about some of the movies that we saw that we want to highlight from the festival that might be worth checking out. Just want to give you guys impressions, like how do we feel about the festival? What are some good films? What are some good short films? And then we'll close it out. I am not alone. I'm joined by our entire deadCenter team. So if you've been following the Cinematropolis.com this week, you've seen some names pop up. 2 of which you know, 1 of which you don't. We're going to start with the ones you know first, going around the table, starting across the table, our associate editor sometimes, Daniel Bokemper. Welcome back to the Cinematic Schematic.
Very heavy on the associate. Thank you for having me.
And across the table from me is a returning writer, also with us at deadCenter last year, Christopher Shultz. Welcome back to the Cinematic Schematic.
Thank you much.
And I'm so excited to be joined for the first time. She is a writer who is joining us for the first time on the Cinematropolis.com. She's been writing at the Oklahoma Gazette and No Film School. We are really honored to have Joe Light join the Cinematropolis team at deadCenter this year. Joe, welcome to the Cinematic Schematic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good times, guys. It's the last day of the festival. We're all sobered up, right?
Yeah, sure. The normal.
Joe, is this your first festival?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I've been to South by and AFF and Sundance. So I've been to several.
Longtime listeners know these Yahoos were on last year with me. We were all 3 very smart Yahoos together. Sorry, you guys are not Yahoos.
Oh, that's okay.
No, we were.
5 years worth of Yahoo.
Yeah.
So, yes, very experienced film festival cover. Okay, excellent. For the listeners out there, that's good to know. How would you guys say, as a whole, this film festival, having been to a couple now, how do you think deadCenter turned out this year?
I mean, from what I saw, I think the quality was high, but I saw very little. And also, unfortunately, not deliberately, I think I avoided like all Oklahoman pieces. I don't know if I saw anything that had a relation to Oklahoma. And I usually at least hit something that has like some relevance. Like last year with Hal, and Amy Scott and her connection to OU, I was able to manage that, not deliberately, but this year I somehow missed the local part.
Why do you hate Oklahoma filmmakers?
I don't know why I do. I mean, I don't think it's conscious, but maybe now it is.
You're right, because last year you missed. Okay, all right, I see how it is.
Yeah. So my bad, but from what I saw, it was great. I just can't speak on the local end, unfortunately.
But did you feel like the offerings this year from kind of the
yeah, actually, and we were speaking earlier, and I think everyone here might agree, the short films seemed like especially good. I really have very, very minor qualms with any of the short films I saw in the selection I had, which was the Unheard Voices. And then the narrative features I heard were pretty good overall as well, at least what I saw. And then the documentaries are always pretty consistent. I
think consistently reliable. Documentary winning Best Oklahoma Feature this year. That's a pretty big deal. Words from a Bear. Full disclosure, it was selected by the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle, and Christopher and I are both members, so we thought it was really great.
It was really great. And I had sort of the opposite experience that you had, whereas I saw a lot more local. But no, Words from a Bear was a really great film. It is going to be on PBS's American Masters at some point later this year. Kind of like Daniel, I didn't get out as much as I did last year just because of, day job and life stuff. So that happened. But while I was there, I really enjoyed it. It seemed to go really smoothly.
Yeah, good deal. Joe, what did you think of deadCenter this year?
I thought it went really well this year, really smoothly. The weather was crazy, but other than that, everything was really, really smooth. Didn't have any trouble getting into screenings. The volunteers did a great job. Maybe I'm the happy medium between you guys because I feel like I saw a good mix of both local and international films and shorts and narratives. So there wasn't anything that I was like not happy with. So
yeah, I think that's a sign of a good film festival. You don't have like any just total duds or anything.
Yeah.
I unlike Daniel, I basically saw exclusively Oklahoma stuff this year. The stuff we get every year is always a lot different than what came the year before. I'm thinking last year we had you people kind of leading the charge in Jurassic Games. This year we were looking at Words from a Bear. We were looking at Era's Outrageous Fortune. you know, which again, even those two were different from the year we had Mickey Reece's Alien and that a couple other movies that year I think were again just distinctly different. A lot of the same names pop up, but the movies are different. I don't know. It's just a different types of stories. So it's always interesting to see. I guess Electric Nostalgia was 3 years ago. Like it's an interesting variety. I'd say
it's nice to have filmmakers that are repeat contributors that like push for that variety too. I think maybe Mickey Reece among them. I don't think he has any one film that's alike. Unfortunately, him and like Brad Neely, I don't know if he's as frequent with the his documentaries as of late. But
if the listeners want to go back and check out the interview we had with Mickey last week, he specifically said, "I don't want to make a movie that someone's already seen."
Yeah.
Which has anyone else seen Arrows of Outrageous Fortune?
I have, yeah.
Okay. Well, Christopher knows what I'm talking about when I just said the movie is definitely doing one thing, and all of a sudden
it's certainly not a movie I've seen before.
Yep.
That is definitely true.
That's
mission accomplished.
I think that's what he seems to be going for, and I would say by and large it worked. It's definitely not Mickey Reece's Alien or what do you do? Broadcast or Strike Your Dear Mistress and Cure His Heart. We've mentioned a number of different features here. Were there any in particular that stood out to you guys? Start with Joe on this one. Was there any feature films in particular that really stood out to you this year as exceptional that maybe listeners should keep their eyes open for?
Well, I'm obsessed with Postal. I saw it yesterday. It's allegedly based on a true story. There's like a little bit of hesitation on the director's part to talk about it as a true story because I don't think he secured the life rights. So he might be in some legal muddy water there.
It's about a mass shooting, right?
No, it's about a customer service experience that this guy has. He wants a package delivered same day and spends the whole day on the phone with this customer service representative, and things go off the rails, and apparently it's true. Loses a hand at one point.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Escalates.
So it really does go kind of nuts, but I really enjoyed it. It's a really funny film. The director really had a good grip on the tone. It's just ridiculous, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I love those kinds of films, kind of the escalation. I think that's a good way to produce some comedy. So it sounds like a dark comedy, though.
Yes,
overall. Okay.
definitely.
Okay. All right. You know, it's interesting saying it's based on a true story. I feel like you could very easily just take the story and like make some small changes to it, and then it's all of a sudden, voila, it's original. Right. But
yeah.
Interesting.
Was there another Postal by like Uwe Boll?
Yes, there was. Maybe
that's what I was.
You were thinking of the video game movie adaptation
based
Postal.
on a true story, loosely, isn't it?
Apparently not. But,
okay.
Well, not for this film anyway.
But Oklahoma is known for it.
Yeah, well, because
it involved a mass shooting, right? I didn't just yell that out of context.
Yeah, it's very morbid,
Okay.
But it was a guy in Edmond. The term "going postal" came from that
But
incident.
it's not about that.
It is not about that.
Okay,
No,
I assume it's better than Uwe Boll's.
It's set in Florida.
I mean,
so
it's Uwe Boll. So
it's a Florida man narrative.
yes, it is.
Those have been popping up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Uwe Boll is definitely the benchmark of all great Postal films. I mean, let's be real.
all
here.
great films. Period. I mean, come on. What are you know?
Yeah.
What's the one the haunted house? What is it? House on the edge of the blood of the.
Dude, I stopped keeping up with Uwe Boll movies
don't
like
know
10
what
years ago. There was a point in my life when I had a lot more time on my hands where I actually I didn't watch them all, but I was tracking all of the Uwe Boll movies.
House of the Dead. That's what.
House of the Dead.
I just kind of wanted to because if you review one of his films negatively, there's a chance he will challenge you to a boxing match.
And
that's pretty cool.
That's actually happened. Unfortunately, Uwe Boll was not at deadCenter to challenge anybody to a boxing match, but I'm glad to hear that.
But one day, maybe.
One day we will be the film festival that lands such great directors as Uwe Boll. Oh my goodness! He made another video game adaptation for
He did a lot.
Yeah, he did a bunch because he's a
Blood
gamer.
Rain and Far Cry.
That was what I was thinking of. I actually watched that one.
One's bad.
Okay, we're getting off.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not good. I don't think he's made a good movie. Anyway,
No.
Uwe Boll, maybe one day. Maybe we can call up Uwe Boll and challenge him to a boxing match because I'm pretty sure none of us would write a positive review of his movie unless it was good.
No.
So, all right. So I'm so glad to hear that Joe liked Postal. That's one that I looked at the schedule and I really wanted to catch, but unfortunately the stars did not align. Keep your eyes open for Postal, I guess, tentatively Postal 2019 on IMDb would probably be the best way to find it. Christopher, any films in particular that stood out to you?
Yeah, we already talked about Words from a Bear, which again, see it. And there's a review of it on the Cinematropolis' website as well for some more detail about that. But it's basically about Scott Momaday, who is a famous writer. He's an Oklahoma native, but he didn't live here for very long before he moved to Arizona. But he still has a lot of ties here. And I believe the filmmaker who made it is from here,
right,
as well. But yeah, just it's a very, very kind of beautiful, just sort of calming film. You watch it and you just sort of feel good about yourself. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend that one. And the only other feature that I saw was Home with a View of the Monster, which I thought to be a really solid debut feature. Two twin brothers originally from Oklahoma, living in LA now, but they really wanted to make their first film here. So that's what they did. And they made sort of a weird kind of mashup of horror movies that...
yeah, you were comparing it in your review to like The Haunting of Hill House and Hereditary to some extent. I mean, obviously, it seemed... The things you said about it made me... I was already intrigued based on the premise. The things you said in your review made me extra intrigued. So
yeah, so they take a lot of elements from sort of various different horror movies. So like the Babadook really kind of stood out because the monster is supposed to be symbolic of psychological issues or emotional problems. And then, but like Paranormal Activity, which is a movie I loathe, by the way, but they utilize...
Which one?
Wait, I mean, pick one. The first one is atrocious, but that's a topic for another time. But yeah, they essentially sort of take like the entire narrative of Paranormal Activity and sort of condense it into like flashbacks and a montage sequence. And it's kind of funny the way that they play with that, and it does kind of work. By sort of putting this sort of supernatural ghost narrative sort of in the background, like it's just sort of a thing that happened a while ago, but we're sort of dealing with the later ramifications of it / other people's problems that are invading these people's lives. So yeah, it was a really interesting film. I got to meet the filmmaker's parents while waiting in line as well, and that was a lot of fun. Very, 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 very much parents, the very, very, very mom and very dad. Very, very proud of their children.
We should interview them. We should interview them on the podcast. I mean, yes, we should absolutely get the brothers of course, but we need to add that's part one of the interview. Part two is the parents,
and they're in the film as well. They played they played basically the Warrens in like a flashback sequence.
That's amazing.
That was them.
That was their parents.
Wow.
So
like they're actually the Warrens. Like they're the Warrens.
No. I mean they're playing like a fictionalized. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the way the Warrens go in and out of horror fiction these days, I just had to clarify.
Well, I mean, it's still the jury's still out as to whether or not they're actual, really real people or not. They could just be inventions of someone's imagination. But this is
what
the Warrens have been the Warrens. So wait, the Warrens haven't been real this entire time.
The Warrens have not been real. I mean,
are the Warrens the same? Okay, hold on. Can you back up? Who are the Warrens again? Are they paranormal investigators?
I can't go too off the rails with the Warrens because I also really hate them.
I also despise them. I just think it's hilarious that are they real? I don't know.
Well, I mean, they basically play characters is what I'm getting at. They're not.
Okay. They are real people, but are they conning people?
Yeah, they're con people. That's yeah. So anyway, they're like the famous paranormal investigators and like the Conjuring movies are based on their cases. And
I don't know what you're talking about, man. They were legit in the
Conjuring. They were there though, Chris.
They work better as fictional characters in movies.
Guys, why are we talking about Uwe Boll? And this is taking a lot of random. The Warrens and Uwe Boll. That's going to be the takeaway from this podcast. Okay. I mean, I'm not complaining. I think it's fantastic. But
I think the good folks at deadCenter would like that we're generating such broad conversation from this one film festival.
All right. So listen up, deadCenter folks. What we're saying is we want Uwe Boll to come and get in a boxing match with the living Warrens. I don't know. Are they both alive?
They're both dead now.
Oh, they're both.
Elizabeth Warren.
Do they have children?
No, not Elizabeth Warren.
Whoa.
Lorraine Warren died like a month ago or something.
Oh, that's it. Okay, I remember I'd seen that in the headline. So they could even better. He can come and fight ghosts. And we want to make sure to clarify this is not. Yeah, we're not talking about fighting Elizabeth Warren. No relation.
That would be interesting.
To the
though. I mean, maybe. I mean, a good campaign booster come and fight Uwe Boll at deadCenter Film Festival.
Well, you know how AOC had that documentary about her election. Maybe Elizabeth Warren. That's how she gets into the film festival circuit, right? She makes a movie about her potential election, maybe, and then she fights Uwe Boll.
Why don't more politicians do that? I feel like it helps. It's always the ones that are I mean, AOC had what I thought was a really good objective.
Well, she actually had whether or not you agree with any of her politics, I think it's safe to say that what she did was kind of incredible.
Her campaign was successful. That's the point. And but I don't know why more do that. It seems like it's just the politicians that end up being really shitty are the ones that get maybe for good reason, get the documentaries made about what was it, Anthony Weiner and his.
Yeah,
you see that from a few years ago?
I didn't see it, but I know what you're talking about.
It's a bit of a heart wrencher.
It was called Wiener.
Oh, was it?
It was just called Wiener.
You know, I actually had this conversation, guys. Okay, I promise we're going to bring it back. But while we're on this tangent, I have legit been asking this question the last couple of years, especially in light of all the Me Too era stuff, which I think it's really awesome. But I'm like, why do we always make documentaries and biopics about the worst people? I mean, I know there's a lot of the themes are interesting, but I'm like, wow, there's a lot of really great people we don't ever put in featured biopics. Maybe it's because they're great and we already know why they're great. Versus you put bad testable people up there because
the thing is we'll also put bad people in there. They'll get a biopic, but we'll completely change how awful they actually were. Ray Charles, for instance, was not a good person at all.
Yeah.
But are we going to talk about how he beat his wife? No.
You kind of gloss over that stuff.
Give Jamie Foxx an Oscar.
So
anyway,
Joe, welcome to your first podcast of the Cinematic.
I knew none of that about Ray Charles. That's what I think my entire knowledge of him was actually from the film. I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh yeah. Bob Marley too. Bob Marley too.
This is definitely we've been to a film festival because we're talking around the films and talking about Uwe Boll, Ray Charles, and the Warrens. So, Joe, where do you weigh in on any of this? Do you have any opinions at all? I mean.
Well, that's educational for me to learn about the Warrens. I didn't realize that they were. I only care about their little museum where they have Annabelle locked up.
Right. Yeah. No. They. I could go on and on about the Warrens. I wrote an article about them once, just about how fraudulent they actually are.
How angry they make you.
But they. I could go on. I won't. All
right. So I'm making this statement right now. I need listeners. I need you guys in the room to hold me accountable. Next time there's a Conjuring movie, which is every 6 months now.
Next year there's going to be one.
Yeah. Me and you will sit down, especially if the Warrens are featured in it somehow. We'll sit down.
And they will be.
Of course they will, because they're basically the superhero of the story. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Paranormal Investigators. So.
It's they took one of the producers of the Conjuring universe. They pulled off to get on the DC stuff. I mean, so you're not far off. Yeah.
I did not know that.
It wasn't a known guy. I couldn't tell you what his name was, but I remember it was specifically they when all the Zack Snyder stuff wasn't working out, they pivoted, and that's where they looked, because they were. I mean, Conjuring's building a cinematic universe. So we are so wildly off topic.
Right.
Me and you,
2020,
and 2020, we're going to talk about the Conjuring.
There may be an Annabelle movie coming up too.
I
we could talk
really
about.
think there's another Annabelle movie coming this year,
very soon.
Coming
in the next 2 or 3 months, probably.
We'll do it then. We'll have a Warrens.
Okay, we will knock them down a few pegs.
They're dead now, so it didn't.
And while we're at it,
Can't
as
get
Dave
much lower.
Chappelle once said, "If you have hate in your heart, let it out." I just want to know something, Chris. I inherently do not believe anyone who says they communicate with the dead or are a paranormal investigator and likely have a documentary or something on the History Channel to that effect, or the Travel Channel. What makes them different than Ghost Hunters International?
Well, they're kind of the ones that started it all. I mean, it starts with
they're the Nosferatu.
Daniel, we're giving away too much. We got to save it for the special podcast.
So, I mean, stay tuned for the Annabelle. Annabelle goes to the bathroom. That comes out.
Annabelle begins again.
Annabelle does America. Yeah, I mean, whatever. But yeah, it started with the Amityville Horror, which is sort of like the very first, like, this was definitely based on a true story, and we know we are definitely not lying about
But
this.
it was like their recollection of it. Like, was that the source material?
They were,
essentially for it, or was it corroborated by?
They were there, and they were sort of doing the investigation. They got kind of famous from being a part of the Amityville Horror, but then they sort of ran with it.
Yeah.
So it's a long and very sort of very, very gross career that those two have. It makes you feel icky. So,
deadCenter. You gotta bring the Warrens back from the dead. You gotta make this happen. I mean,
at the dead center of this argument.
Oh goodness, we talking about things that are dying very fast. This conversation being on track. So I promise we're just not this off track every week. Daniel, what was a feature that you would like to highlight?
Narrative or documentary or
narrative, unless you really want to talk about a docu. You can do both. Actually, do both. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. So, Come As You Are, which was the won the jury prize or the special jury prize.
They give away a couple of those.
Yeah, for a narrative feature. It was a film made in, I believe, Illinois, but it's a American like road trip film directed by Richard Wong. I don't know what else he's done, but it stars.
Was it like a remake or a reimagining?
Oh, yeah. And it's a remake of a 2011 Belgian film, Hasta la Vista, having nothing to do with Arnold Schwarzenegger or Terminator. But still a great film nonetheless, which in turn is about a true story of, I believe, Asta Philpott, who is an American who has it's not, I don't think degenerative disease is the right word for it, but it's a disease from birth that basically your joints don't really work the way they're supposed to. So inevitably, while you can live your entire life, you likely will not be able to move your mobility. Most people are effectively quadriplegic with this disease. And thus any like social life, any normal interactions are likewise hindered. So, Asta, what he wanted to do, when he was in his mid-20s was, I can't develop a sex life. I don't know how to build relationships with people without something. And he found a legal brothel in Belgium that catered to people with disabilities. And so he went there with a few friends who were, likewise suffered from disabilities, and found a way to kind of both have the interaction they've been looking for, which is a sexual experience, but B, it also helped them, it gave them the confidence essentially to develop more meaningful relationships. This might sound a little bit familiar to a film that came out in 2012 that featured William H. Macy, and I can't remember who was the lead in it or the director, but it was The Sessions, which was about I believe a quadriplegic man who hired a sex therapist to help him kind of get through life. And then from there, he was able to build relationships meaningfully, not just sexually with a number of different people. And this film kind of follows that. So it follows Scotty, who's played by Grant Rosenmeyer. I didn't recognize much of his work, except he was in the Royal Tenenbaums several years ago. He might not look the same as he did in that film because
and that was in the 90s. Yes,
early 2000s, right?
Early 2000s.
It was like 2001.
2001. Okay,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Early odds. Okay,
He played, I think, an 11-year-old, maybe younger.
Okay,
so he he might not look too familiar, and in this film especially because he's playing essentially Asta, this man who lives with he's a 24-year-old who lives with this disease with his mom. And, she effectively takes care of him. He's very passionate. He tries to develop his comedy, his charisma. He enjoys rapping, freestyle rapping a lot. But he's never had a sexual experience. And he knows that's one thing that's like he's desperately missing in order to make, any kind of like meaningful social interaction. And the film plays with this kind of weird because at first, like a lot of his raps are a bit chauvinistic, a bit grotesque, and you kind of want to hate him at first. They kind of frame him as a guy who's kind of a jerk, but slowly you see that as it's a defense mechanism effectively. And the film is very keen to paint it as such. I don't know how the original film fared in this realm because it feels very Americanized. The way they build up Scotty, it doesn't feel like something that's, that would have appeared in the Belgian film, I guess. It just wouldn't have made sense, at least in the time it did, but maybe it was. I don't know, but either way, this character translated well as Matt and Mo, played by Hayden Setzo and Ravi Patel, who you might know from like Master of None. He was also in Long Shot more recently. both another friend who is wheelchair bound, but his upper torso is mostly functioning, and then Mo, who is legally blind. They all are kind of serve as these antitheses to one another. And they find out in Canada, there is and I think they're living in like Midwestern America, but in Canada, there is a legal brothel that Asta Philpott himself actually plays the I guess the owner, the proprietor of it, is kind of a cameo.
Owner.
Yeah. To that, you can make a donation, and it's legal through that method. It's in Montreal, and so they'd resolved to hire a driver outside of their care network and drive to road trip essentially to Canada, and without the knowledge of their parents, who are their primary caretakers. And the driver is actually Sam is played by Gabby Sidibe, who you might know from Precious, was where she had her bit of a meteoric rise in her career. So overall, the film was really nice. It balances its humor well, because like you think of like American road trip films, and so like I default to like Road Trip with Tom Green and like other films that aren't so serious. You think of like maybe Van Wilder, National Lampoon, and then you kind of have to broaden it to define it as like other things, like Thelma and Louise. I would consider a road trip film.
Yeah, I can see that.
But like it's weird. And the interesting thing is, it was filmed entirely in Illinois, despite technically the film takes place across 8 states. So with a very low budget, they were able to utilize what they had access to. But B, it was really quaint. Like you feel like it would have been super. It really is a bunch of guys. I mean, they make the joke repeatedly, a bunch of guys going to get laid. And at first that seems kind of funny, and it does feel like a more lighthearted comedy, but it quickly takes a turn for the both the more severe, but I think also the more moving. Ultimately. So I think, I don't know, the script really carries the film more so than ever, but it also has a cast that can deliver their lines well, and it doesn't feel as sometimes films of this nature can feel a little bit clunky, can feel a bit heavy-handed, and this film knew when to dial back and forth, I guess, with its stakes, and that's rare to see that kind of ability to navigate. And apparently it's a script that's been around since like 2012 is when they initially wanted to adapt it,
right? And
it just sat in the incubator. Apparently Emile Hirsch was in line at one point for the lead, and then for whatever reason it sat in development hell.
As many Hollywood filmmaking stories happen, there's an awesome script that came out and then takes like 10 years to get made.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was this as well, but I think the form it appears in now might be the about as good as it probably could have been.
Excellent. So that's Come As You Are.
Come As You Are. Okay. Yep. Check it out on IMDb. I don't know. There was no announcement as to where it would be streaming. It's hitting the festival circuit continually right now.
Okay, so you might find it at a film festival. Be the best way for listeners maybe to catch it.
Right now, I wouldn't be surprised within the next 6 months if you found it somewhere,
like on demand. Yeah.
The one other thing, and I'll spend a lot less time on the other film, was a documentary feature, Jay Myself, which is based on the life and work of Jay Mizell, who was they didn't stretch too hard for the title, but he is a probably one of the most successful commercial photographers. He was most prolific in the 60s and 80s. He is kind of known for, he bought a bank as like a pretty young dude. When he first started his career, he literally just bought a 6-story bank in New York, and he has lived there for 50 years. So while the film documents his career, it also documents him moving out and the collection of things he's put in this bank, because it's 6 stories completely filled with just objects, because their only use is for photography. So he has the bolts of a machine that he took apart years ago, all separated out in this these individual caddies, and it kind of just looking at a person who's lived their life, raised a family like this. The reason I'm hesitant to really give it a glowing review, and this is sometimes the problem with documentaries, is when the subject becomes a little problematic and there's something that lingers on. So I question the sincerity, or if I really care about this. There's a moment where he starts talking about bum. He uses the word bums for homeless people, which he's an older guy. I mean, people, sure, maybe you give a pass for that as long as they're not being assholes. But it's weird to me that he's talking about the only place I don't like about living here is the amount of he bums, and he's like, oh, they don't bother me. They just sleep on the curb, and they look really sad. And I'm like, motherfucker, you have a 6-story building that could house 200 to 300 people, and and then the film only spends, it seems like that would have been an interesting conflict to look at. Like, here's a person who's kind of, in a way, living in a form of excess. He's still an artist.
Sure.
He's still, doing his thing. But then you see, the homeless that surround his building, for them to like really gloss over that. And it's like that lingered.
Yeah.
That comment happens really early in the film, and you think they're going to do something more with it, weave it into it, and it just doesn't. And likewise, the pacing is a little weird. You get the whole like an hour of his career, and then the final 25 minutes is like, oh, and I'm transitioning out of this move. Like I've got to, and then it's about how long it took, like, 25 basically full-size U-Haul trucks to like load up all this stuff and get him moved somewhere else in New York. But not quite as good, like objectively well made, but I feel like there wasn't much, there were questions that could have been asked that maybe the documentarian just like deliberately just turned a blind eye to, probably because he was a student of Marcel. So you just wanted to celebrate him, and it makes it kind of weird when you don't. I don't know. I feel like in a documentary, you should probably approach like we were talking about earlier with like the Ray Charles biopic and, the biopic of any number of other people that aren't great. If you see them in a moment of being not great, maybe, I don't know. I think it's not inappropriate to emphasize that or frame it.
I mean, like maybe find a way to like work that into the story, or make that part of the, or just make it more clear. Maybe you don't plant it like narrative seeds as much as you are just trying to highlight that they're not a good guy, or maybe that they're problematic.
And he might be okay, and that it's just the weird thing is there's like a conflict of interest, especially when your subject is still very much alive. Like, I don't know, maybe you can't.
Well, talking about making documentaries about people who aren't, or documentaries, biopics about people who might not be the best. But I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about The Art of Self-Defense, which is a great film that I caught at South by Southwest a few months ago, and was excited to get another stab at it again this time. And I'm excited because I think we're going to be looking at, fingers crossed, an interview with the director, Riley Stearns, that'll be going up on the website hopefully later this week. It hasn't been recorded yet, but we are on the schedule. So I think listeners will keep their ears and eyes on the RSS feed. But this is a film that stars Jesse Eisenberg as a guy named Casey Davies. He's kind of an accountant who basically gets mugged and beat the little crap gets beat out of him. So he survives this really traumatic event where he just straight up gets beat up by going to learn karate. That's the premise. And it's a very dark comedy. I want to say it's something along the lines of like there's a little bit of like Wes Anderson in there. There's a little bit of, I don't know. Cronenberg. There's like a lot of like really dark.
Wes Anderson and Cronenberg is an interesting combination.
Well, it's very like the jokes. It's a dark subject matter. I would actually say, okay, here we go. Fight Club, a touch of Cronenberg, executed like a Wes Anderson movie. There you go. Starring Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots. Like it's, I think if I was going to pitch it, that's what, because thematically it has a lot in common with Fight Club. I think the scope's quite a bit smaller. It's more, not that Fight Club's not a character story, but this seems like it's more about the character and his relationships with the people around him, less about the big philosophical ideas. But I mean, the movie does tackle some pretty big themes that I think are very relevant. Toxic masculinity, cycles of violence. I think, feminism to a certain degree. Imogen Poots is like constantly having to work to get into this. She's not she's not respected. Like, even though she's actually better at karate than all of these other people, she's still like looked down upon by the rest of the group, and it's not even to the point where she has to prove herself. It's just they are like, nah, women just can't be that good at karate. They don't deserve to wear this like superior belt. Like it's a thing they deal with. It is really funny though, like dark funny. Like it's upsetting and funny. The South by Southwest audience that I caught it with was there for it. They got it. They were laughing at it. It was very uncomfortable quite a bit of the time. Like just the movie as a whole was uncomfortable. And I think everyone's kind of laughing to kind of let it out. And I think it works really well as a comedy. The OKC crowd was also into it to a much more restrained degree, I would say. It's a different crowd.
It's a lot of nervous laughter.
Yeah. Okay. There's the South by crowd that's like laughing at the jokes because it's hilarious, but also kind of continuing to laugh a little bit because of how uncomfortable and upsetting some of the stuff is.
Yeah.
Then there's the OKC crowd that's like, is it okay for me to laugh? I guess I'm going to do it anyway because this is really bad. Like, not the movie. Sorry. What is happening in the story is really bad. But I want to give a shout out to it, though. The Art of Self-Defense. This is a film that's actually going to be going wide, I believe, July 12th. It's going to be doing a limited run early July and going wide later that month. So that's a film that you will be able to catch. And it's distributed by Bleecker Street. I highly recommend you make some time this summer to see it. There's tons of blockbusters. They're going to be playing all summer long. This is a really good low-key one. I think it deserves your money, and I would really love to see what else Riley Stearns can cook up if given the opportunity. So I say support this movie, and I also think it's probably one of my favorite movies of the year so far. It's just an interesting movie.
I have to say, I saw the brief description of it. I mean, I didn't read it very much in depth, but I was just like, oh, it's a Jesse Eisenberg karate movie? Okay. I wasn't that interested in it, but you talking about it actually makes me want to see it. Well,
I think we'll go ahead and move on to talk a little bit about the short films. I'll go ahead and just kick us off by talking a little about The Stand-In. That is the winner of the Okie Shorts this year, directed by Yusuf Kazime. If you're here local in Oklahoma City, and you're really plugged into the film community, you probably know him. He's really a swell guy. He works in the Oklahoma Film and Music Office and is very supportive of a lot of projects. So, it was a really touching story, basically about this gay wedding that was happening, and someone's mother would not be at the wedding because it's not supporting a gay marriage, right? Yeah. And so another person stepped in to kind of fill the role of mother for the person.
The true story of the free mom hugs woman whose name escapes me.
It is essentially it's essentially a story,
a fictionalized story of her. Yeah.
So Free Mom Hugs is an actual nonprofit organization here in Oklahoma City for people people who are getting married, with same-sex couples or whatnot, who their parents don't show. So moms who don't come out to the wedding, because that's actually a big problem, especially here in the Bible Belt in Oklahoma. Yeah. And they have women in the organization who go and kind of stand in and are emotionally supportive for those people. So on their big day. So it's actually made a lot of headlines nationally. I think the founder was. I'm going to look her up right now just so we get the name down.
Well, there's apparently going to be a biopic about her starring Jamie Lee Curtis.
Because Jamie Lee Curtis specifically came to pitch her and said, "I want to make a biopic about you."
Yep,
that's amazing.
And that's how our friend Laurent Chapman got to meet her, and he's also in The Stand-In.
Yes, Laurent Chapman was in The Stand-In. We had it was a good little. I think it was a neat little community thing. There was a lot of a lot of the talent here in Oklahoma City. I mean, Jacob Burns worked on the short film. It was good. I think the shorts block in general was great. I find this. I think this is firstly, it's just a really well made short film. But I do think the moment of time with the political climate where it is, seeing a very uplifting story from an underrepresented group of people just played very well at the festival, played very well for critics. So I think that's why it won the best Oklahoma short film. And, Yusuf's been hustling really hard here in the film community for a while. So, kudos to him. Well-deserved hard work. But I will say the rest of that block is excellent. I think the entire Okie Shorts, we talked about it earlier. All of these short films. So like Los Americanos, Spirit Citizen, Means of Transportation, Mobius, the painting, Swing on a Star, The Third. Like these are all of them, even short films I never would have watched on my own normally. Were pretty well made. And not just from a production standpoint, but they really capture the human element rather well, I think. So kudos to everyone who made Okie Shorts this year. But yeah, The Stand-In was the winner. So the founder of the Free Mom Hugs organization is Sarah Cunningham.
Sarah Cunningham, yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe this is a little bit of a sneak peek for that Jamie Lee Curtis biopic, maybe. Who knows?
Maybe. We'll see.
See you down the road. Joe, was there any short films in particular that stood out to you at the festival this year?
I saw the Love, Sex, and Death shorts, and there were several in that block that I really, really enjoyed. I wrote about them as really a good platform for a lot of female voices, which I appreciated. There was one called Baggage that was really cute. It's basically a woman who experiences all her self-doubts as her ex-boyfriends who just follow her around constantly and talk about her body or talk about her choices. And it's really, really funny and cute. And I think that one probably is online. I'm not sure. And then there was another one on that blog called Formaldehyde, which is a little bit darker. It was about a coroner who is played by, sorry, I'll find his name.
Was this the one that was in French?
Sorry?
Was this one in French?
No.
No, okay.
No. This is the one that features John Reynolds, who's from Search Party and Stranger Things. He plays a coroner who he basically imagines himself talking to the victims that he gets picks up.
Ooh, that's a heavy one, man. Ooh.
Yeah, but it was really well done because it was really sensitive. It was a girl that had died at a party, and so he kind of uses that experience to look at that person's life and what was going on in her life and kind of involve himself in it a little bit in a way that isn't creepy. It was really sensitive and smart and well done, and I appreciated that one too.
So Baggage and Formaldehyde are the good ones.
Those are my favorites probably from that block. There were several strong ones about death and religion and relationships, and some of them were funny and some of them were really heavy. There were 2 French language ones in that block that were a little bit more artsy and longer, but still really strong.
Very cool. And you wrote about those. Those are up on the cinematropolis.com for listeners who want to dive into that's the Death, Love, and Sex shorts. Yeah, wait, sorry, I got that wrong.
Love
sex, death. Wrong order. Love, Sex, and Death shorts. All right. Chris, what do you think? Any shorts in particular that stood out to you this year?
Yeah, I went to the After Dark shorts block again this year, and it was a really solid block. I mean, honestly, I don't think that there was a bad one amongst them. Some stood out more than others. This one in particular this year was really leaning into like the horror and bizarre, which I appreciated personally. Not a lot of people in the audience did. It was a very cranky audience when I saw it, and they were not happy that it was as dark and strange as it was.
The After Dark shorts.
The After Dark shorts. Yeah,
they were upset that the After Dark shorts were dark.
There's no accounting for taste, I suppose, but
fair enough.
Or the ability to read what you're getting into.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I will say, but when I think After Dark shorts, I think, dark's part of it, but I always think of like the midnight shorts, because I know we don't technically have a midnight shorts block at DeadCenter, but I always think of that, right?
The closest thing I think to what, and I mean, you're not really, it's not like you're going into Eraserhead or anything like that. I mean, there's nothing that's like that.
You're not going to see Beyond the Black Rainbow or anything?
No. I mean, maybe. There was a particular, and the filmmakers were in attendance for the screening block that I went to. It was a trio of short films. They were each, I don't know, like 8 to 10 minutes long. But it was called Who You Are. And basically the premise is they have this computer, and it's just like an old Apple. It's like an old Macintosh from like the 80s, but it can read your soul. It can tell you essentially who you are, and they very much play it for like how goofy it sounds, but it's also really creepy, and it's very funny and then very very kind of unsettling at turns. They had a guy who's like really involved in like improv to do the voice of the computer, and so he's really foul-mouthed, and it's very funny the way that the computer will sort of talk back to these 2 guys and like he's a sassy robot essentially, but then it'll turn and it'll get really weird and really dark. So that was a particular highlight, and I think too, like even beyond it being dark, it was just so strange that a lot of the people weren't just really gelling with it. But this is it was a trio of short films, but it's 5 installments altogether, and they're basically trying to make this as a proof of concept for a series. So we may see Who You Are, the series, on down the road. But other than that, there was a really good stop motion film that showed called Framed, which is basically to kind of sort of talk about the the premise of it would be to sort of really give it away. So I think it's better to seek it out. I don't know if it's online or not. It's a Spanish language, I think, or maybe Portuguese. I'm not sure. Yeah, really kind of reminiscent of like the characters in it looked sort of like Wallace and Gromit, but it was also like the Key brothers, who do really strange experimental stop motion, or like Jan. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I never get it right. But the guy who made like the Alice in Wonderland adaptation, stop motion, and tons and tons of short work. So yeah, it was just, again, kind of this mix of like the characters sort of look funny and there's like cartoonish type stuff happening, but the narrative is really dark. So that one really stood out. And then the third one that really stood out was called The Other Side of the Box. And again, go into this one blind. I bet you're going to find it online at some point, or somewhere. But yeah, it's that one is really wild. But yeah, I mean the entire block was really good. It really clipped by. I didn't feel the 90 minutes, 2 hours of it. It was just a really solid collection.
It's a good block, good pacing. That's another thing about the Schwartz blocks. There have definitely been Schwartz blocks, and not even just at deadCenter, but at film festivals you go to sometimes, and you're like, there's like 2 that stand out really well, and there's the other 3 that you're less enthusiastic about, and you're kind of waiting to get to the next one. But it sounds like, all right, at least across the board over here, that all the shorts were pretty strong in general.
Yeah.
Daniel, any shorts in particular that stood out to you?
Yeah, so I saw one collection, the Unheard Voices shorts. I'll have a full review reaction of that probably up on the Cinematropolis later. It was 8 films. They were all, I guess, Unheard Voices, more so channels like usually it's films about the marginalized or the oppressed or literally the unheard, and whatever that may entail. So there's films about probably the first film that it opens with, which is particularly it's emotionally trying, and a bit of a difficult watch despite how brief it is. Grace, which is a film from Alexia Aldini and Stephen Gray. And it also stars in a role, despite only being 6 minutes long. It's very reminiscent of Gabby's in the aforementioned Precious. It's Chanel Edmonds stars as a girl named Grace, who is basically forced out of it's a forcible eviction. I'm not sure what city she lives in, but her and her mother are separated. And she has to try and, while living in the shelter, still go to school, still do everything that's expected of her. She's black, going to a very predominantly white school, and it's also in the mid of, a very, very heavy instances of police brutality. And you really just see a glimpse. I don't want to call it a vignette. I feel like I tread the line sometimes of like mistaking certain short films for a vignette, but overall the dialogue is a bit minimal after the first half of it, and then it moves into just quite a bit more heavy imagery that can be difficult to watch, but still very telling, and I think very necessary. But that's what it opened with. There was another few interesting films that were just as equally heart-wrenching. There's a really cool one that followed Grace immediately, which was Lady Samurai, which is a film from James Latimer, and it's about Kaori Kawabuki, who, Caleb, you might know her. I don't know. She's a motion mocap artist.
Oh.
But she got she became famous through work with Final Fantasy 13, and then she's done like every Final Fantasy game since then that required.
What's her name? Remind her name again. What's that?
It's Kaori Kawabuki.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm probably very familiar with her work then. Yeah.
It's really cool. It's a short film. It really just like examines, it's her narrating over her kind of almost practicing her artistry, which is mostly performance art. And
yeah.
So she's a swordsman trained, and it kind of goes into pretty great detail about how she frames her own life and her career, and it does so over about an 8-minute period. But very interesting. From there, one film that I think is another. A lot of these were just really difficult to watch. Again, very, very important, but hard. It had a couple animated films that were really interesting. One that stuck out to me was A Line Birds Cannot See, which is a film by Amy Bent, I believe. And it documents a woman who is narrating her experience of how she was attempting to, and I'm not sure where she was migrating from, but to America ultimately, I believe from South America and up through Mexico into North America, and how she was separated from her mother, placed with I think what they referred to as like a coyote, which was kind of like somebody who can traffic people successfully, but instead she ends up basically as a 12-year-old, a child sex ring, and she's kidnapped and kept there, and then at one point deported, and then basically sent back into this circle, and eventually is able to connect with her mother out of the kindness of really just one random person, get back into America. But again, another film that's very heavy. The animation does not serve to sabotage it at all. I think it actually illustrates the story and gives it a lot more breadth. Very well made. I'm not sure what to compare it to because it's kind of unique, but it gives me feelings of, like Persepolis maybe in a more,
right. The Breadwinner or something like that, maybe.
The Breadwinner. Yeah. Actually, The Breadwinner is what I was thinking of too when watching this. I just couldn't think of the name. The last two, the one that was the kind of the penultimate film was The Slows, which was kind of the one, it kind of stood out because it seemed like it was the one with a bit of maybe a higher budget or maybe a higher production value. Not to say any of these were, I think, looked bad or anything like that, or felt that wasn't really noticeable, but this one was a bit higher. It kind of felt reminiscent of what was that film you referenced? It was Who Am I, or with
Who You Are,
excuse me. The Slows, it kind of seems like maybe it could be like a Black Mirror episode or something. It's a science fiction, and it was one of the few
that got my attention. So.
Right. No, and it seems like one that it was kind of more of the genre pieces that was in this collection. It was the most genre one, honestly, and it's about a future where humans have almost wiped everyone out, but we found a way to save ourselves by basically giving up biological or like sexual reproduction, and instead humans are born scientifically, and then they're like accelerated in a matter of moments from infancy to adulthood, and then they're presumably a full functioning member of society. And
that does sound like a Black Mirror premise.
Yeah, and like there's these people that live on a preserve called the Slows, hence the title, that abandon that, and so they have normal children. They produce sexually, but they're living in like the thick of poverty. And
sounds kind of like Gattaca, actually.
Right.
And that way.
It's kind of neat. And it's about a woman who's played by, I recognized her. I think it's Annette Mahintran. I think she's in a few other things that were, I think, television primarily.
Okay.
But she's a journalist who's a 5-year-old journalist, but an adult in this society. Documenting these people as they're about to be assimilated and their children accelerated, as they put it. And a really, really interesting, pretty fascinating look. What concluded was an actual, like a documentary of this, and the final film was Lowland Kids, which I think, especially given the rainfall that both surrounded this film festival, but also just of recent in Oklahoma, it was about the basically the United States' first climate change refugees, which are out of Louisiana.
Because the water levels are rising so fast, it's flooding people out of their homes.
Exactly. And so there's the only route to their homes are like covered in water, water that you cannot drive through for 5 days at a time. They really can't realistically live there anymore. It was also expedited by nearshore, like drilling and oil and gas industries, and all the cool things,
the usual suspects. Yeah.
Right. Which is also, whoever programmed this one, good on them for not putting this in like the Chesapeake Energy like sponsor theater, or the theater. Devon or the, I thought OG&E had one too.
Yeah, they do.
I feel like there was a lot that could have been very, would have felt a little weird.
I'm sure there was some intentionality with how that was selected.
Probably a bit. Fortunately, Mid-First Bank doesn't have, at least doesn't seem to have anything to do with the negative repercussions that are taking place in this. But it follows a family, a very atypical family in Louisiana, and basically their final month before they move. And it's about 15 minutes, but it's really trying. It's very, it's just kind of a photo of what is and what they're going to do with this place that they, lived in their entire lives, but their families and their ancestors have been for quite a while. So
Interesting subject matter.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate reality we live in.
Probably the most topical.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's hard. It almost feels weird.
No one thinks about those stories yet, that there are refugees in America who are moving.
Climate change refugees specifically, the thing we sometimes argue. Well, I don't think any of us would hear, but people argue exists.
The talking heads on news channels argue doesn't exist or whatnot.
Right.
So you're telling me it's real?
It is probably very.
It's not a hoax.
Probably real. Well,
I don't know.
Chris,
Man,
there's a lot of literature.
I think
we could.
This is Al Gore has lots of money, Daniel. Maybe he just made this whole thing up. It was all on a stage, just like the moon landing. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think we're about out of time. But thanks so much for taking time to kind of report back and talk a little bit about your deadCenter experience and chase some very wild rabbits. Uwe Boll 2020 deadCenter. I believe in you. Joe, thank you so much for joining the Schematic the first time. Thank you so much for joining the Cinematropolis team. It's really been great editing your pieces so far. I know at the time of this recording, I still haven't gotten through all of them yet, but it's great looking forward to seeing what else you whip up for us. So
yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. Is there anywhere people can keep up with you online?
Probably Twitter's the best. I'm at Joe_Lightly, Lightly. No, film school, and primarily for film and entertainment news, and then Oklahoma Gazette if you want to cover or read about local issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do have some Oklahoma listeners in the house, interwebs, whatever. Christopher Shultz, where can people keep up with you online?
You can, maybe friend me on Facebook. I might friend you back. I don't know, sometimes. Twitter's a good place. But you can find all my online presences at my website, which is www.christopherschultz.com.
All right. Daniel Bokemper, where can people keep up with you?
Yeah, so just spell Daniel Bokemper the best you can in Google. You'll probably find me. On Twitter, and I forget what my actual Twitter handle is right now. So
it's like Daniel_Bokemper, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, keep it simple. That's good. I still forgot it, even though it was my name, but whatever. Or Facebook if you really want to. I think I have an Instagram too. You can most importantly find me on the Cinematropolis as well as World Literature Today. Periodically the Gazette, probably a little less frequent than Joe, and wherever other Daniel Bokempers are sold.
You should Bokemper Horseman. It should be your handle.
Bokemper Horseman?
Like BoJack Horseman.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
when you say wherever other Daniel Bokempers are sold, do batteries come included?
Yeah, sometimes you look around and say, no. Lithium ion.
Okay. All right. And of course, you can find me tweeting about all the things on Twitter at CMastersTalk. That's letter C Masters Talk. But more importantly, keep up with all of the deadCenter coverage. We have a lot. I think we have somewhere around 10 to 12 total pieces between essays and podcasts and everything coming out. So you can find all of that at the cinematropolis.com or hit us up on Facebook at facebook.com/the Cinematropolis or on Twitter at the Cinematrop. It's been a pleasure. Another deadCenter for the books. For Joe, another film festival for the books. Second this year? Second
this year? Yeah, second this year.
All right, very cool. All right, listeners, make sure to stay tuned. Well, we'll be talking about Toy Story 4. It's been a long weekend, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time.